Hey YouTubers, welcome back. I'm sorry I didn't put a video out. My gosh, has it been 2 weeks? I think it might have been 2 weeks. But I'm back, and today I wanted to talk about the topic of people pleasing. And I wanted to talk about it because I recently ran across a really interesting video that talks about people pleasing and in general, this YouTuber is just so knowledgeable and he really puts out really great content. And actually, if you're interested in the topic, I highly recommend checking him out. I certainly want to give credit where credit is due. And he just brought up a lot of topics that really, for me, were like groundbreaking and really made a lot of sense. And he talks about people pleasing in a way that I never looked at people pleasing in a way that in a way he got me thinking about people pleasing in a way that I had never thought about it before. That's what I'm trying to say. And so this YouTuber, his name is Jerry Wise. It's Jerry, and his last name is spelled Wise. So a little bit about Jerry. He's got 45 years of experience. He is a life coach. I believe he's not a trained or licensed therapist, but I think I did watch some of his videos. I started to get the impression that he is just somebody who maybe went through this journey himself and he probably spent a lot of time researching, kind of like what I'm doing, except he's been doing it for 45 years. So he's really, really knowledgeable and smart and makes a lot of sense. And I really feel that he can help a lot of people, and I'm so grateful for his channel. I'm a new subscriber of his, and I just wanted to share his name because for anyone who's watching my channel, I'm assuming that you are interested in these topics and interested in checking out anyone who is putting out really valuable content out there on these topics. So as I mentioned, Jerry is a life coach, and a few his channel is sort of broken down. He's got sort of I don't know if you would say subcategories, but he's got like some of the examples of the different groups of videos that he has set up on his channel are healing. Forgive me, I have a very stuffy nose, so sorry about that. Healing for adults of children of alcoholics. That's like one section of his channel. Narcissistic family detachment. Self-differentiation, which is one that I really want to look into. And then growing beyond the codependent recovery. So I think that just kind of means like once you've worked on your recovery from, growing up with a abusive parent or being in a codependent relationship, how you can sort of thrive after you've done the healing. So not just healing, but actually like thriving after that. So anyhow, I just wanted to share his name because like I said, he really I think has a lot to offer the YouTube community in terms of understanding trauma and being able to heal from it and really understanding where it all comes from. I think that in order to heal from something, it really helps to understand where it all stems from and where it comes from and why we maybe behave in the way that we do, or why the people in our lives that have been abusive behave the way they do. It just kind of helps, it helps sort of connect all of the dots. So yeah, I found his video really interesting, and he basically, so I think the statement that he made that really, really was an aha moment for me is the fact that he talks about people pleasing Well, I guess before I even go into that, let's maybe go into the topic of what people pleasing is for people who don't know what people pleasing is. People pleasing is basically not honoring your own wants, your own desires. And instead of honoring what you want, it's honoring what the other person wants. It's honoring what the other person wants and honoring the happiness of the other person over, sorry, apparently I also have a stiff neck. It's putting somebody else before yourself. It's putting someone else's happiness, someone else's wants, someone else's desires ahead of your own. Now, that's not always, it's not always a bad thing, right? Because that's what we call selflessness. But for people who are people pleasers, they are doing this all the time. They're always putting someone else's needs before their own. Or at least like the majority of the time. And I think that it can be very confusing because if you look at things like religion or just society in general, like you're kind of always conditioned or told or taught to be selfless and to put the needs of others ahead of your own. And I think that that's a good thing, as I've said before. I mean, I'm Catholic, and for me, that's just being selfless is literally part of my religion. It's part of what we are taught by God, and it's it's not a bad thing at all. But I do think that we have to also remember to love ourselves in that process, and part of loving ourselves is honoring what we want also. So anyways, people pleasing. What is people pleasing? Let's go back to that. So it's just where you're putting the needs of someone else's needs ahead of your own and not honoring what you need or what you want for yourself. And you might ask, why would somebody people please? Like, where does that come from? That was my first thought, my first question. Why do I people please? I always thought it was just something like loving. It was just part of being a loving person. It was just part of being a good person. It was part of being a moral person. And again, it is those things, but not when you're doing it like the majority of the time. And so Jerry talks about people pleasing, and he actually like talks about it in a way that was really sort of he talks about it in a way that I've never heard before. So he basically says, and I don't know if he's the originator of this thought. I'm sure, maybe there's other people that have presented it in this way, but I heard about it from him, from his videos, and I wanted to share. So he talks about people pleasing as anxiety. He says that people pleasing is anxiety in disguise. And I thought that was so interesting because, I always thought, I'm very fortunate. I've never suffered from depression, from anxiety. If I have, it's been very situational. Like I've gone through I was grieving the loss of a family member or the loss of a job or something. Like I was grieving something. And so or I was in a very, very stressful relationship, something like that. But I've never had and no judgment to anyone that does have that, but I've been very fortunate that I have never suffered from anxiety or depression, like as a normal, regular thing. So when he said that people pleasing is actually anxiety in disguise, that was very eye-opening for me because I never thought of myself as having anxiety. But it makes a lot of sense. So people pleasing is actually a self-defense mechanism, and it's designed by the self, meaning yourself, to keep your abuser at bay, to keep you safe. So, I really was able to relate to this because when I was a young child, as like early as I can remember, I was always walking on eggshells with my mother. And as in true form of an abuser, I was in trouble whether I did something wrong, whether I didn't do something wrong. And so I spent like a lot of my childhood being really afraid all the time. I was in a constant state of fear, which is what happens when you are with an abuser, whether you're married to one, dating one, or you're raised by one, or both raised by two parents who are abusers. And so I, as a self-defense mechanism, I was just always in a constant state of fear, which is what like anxiety is, right? Anxiety and fear like come together. They come hand in hand together. And so I was constantly trying to be perfect, trying to not do anything wrong, trying to always putting my mother's needs ahead of my own, trying to act like the adult when in fact she was the adult and she should have been the responsible one. But I was always assuming more responsibility than I should. Like when you're a kid, you shouldn't be assuming really any responsibility, right? Because you're just a child, and your parent is supposed to be the one that's responsible for you. But in a situation where, the abusive parent is neglecting the child, and everything is the child's fault, according to the abusive parent. That's what abusers do. They make everything your fault, regardless of what the situation is. Which again leaves the one who's being abused in a constant state of fear. So I grew up constantly apologizing for things that were not my fault, assuming responsibility that wasn't supposed to be mine. And, of course the abusers reinforce all of that because they're constantly telling you that everything is your fault, right? Even though that makes absolutely zero sense, but this is how the abusers work. They don't assume responsibility for anything. They never take accountability, and everything is the fault of the one who's being abused. So I, in reading, I say reading because I'm like looking at my notes, but watching Jerry's video and just learning about this, it was just so eye-opening and sort of like freeing in a way, because if you're like me, you've been people-pleasing, you've been programmed to people-please since you were a child. And we grow up thinking that we don't matter. We grow up thinking that we don't need to honor our own feelings. We're not even sure what our own feelings are, like half the time, because we've been so beaten verbally and physically sometimes into, I know I was, into submission. And so we grow up kind of fearing having an opinion of our own. And it can be really tough because, I know I have really struggled sometimes with even knowing what my own preferences are, like feeling like I don't even know myself. And so part of what I'm doing as an adult is trying to figure out who I am and what my preferences are. And sometimes when you've been in a romantic relationship with an abuser, first of all, that's part of the attraction and the draw to somebody who is an abuser when you have grown up being abused, is it feels familiar, it feels comfortable, and it feels normal, which is so messed up when you think about it. But it also makes a lot of sense because this is what you have been used to. And so, it sort of makes sense to look for something that feels familiar to you, even though it's not healthy. So I think as adults that are working to heal ourselves, part of that healing is really reprogramming yourself and having enough self-awareness to understand the behavior that you are taking part in that is unhealthy. And so, I think for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people out there who have been abused, people pleasing is one of those behaviors that we really need to work on stopping. So how do you do that? That was kind of what my thought process was after I watched this video. Like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know the thing that I'm doing that's not healthy, the thing that I'm doing that's allowing myself, part of it is the people pleasing, that's allowing myself to engage with people who are really selfish, abusive, who don't have my interests at heart, and really like making an effort to take responsibility, like for my own actions as well. This is not just about telling the abuser that they're the ones that are in the wrong and it's all their fault, but it's also about like taking responsibility for the things that you are doing wrong in the relationship, whether it's your fault or not. Like it's not your fault if you were raised by an abusive parent and sort of programmed this way, but you can only use that excuse for so long. And when you become an adult, part of being an adult is really working on your self-awareness and taking responsibility for the things that you are doing wrong in your adult relationships. So, for me, that has been looking at the people-pleasing aspect and trying to figure out a way to stop doing that, to stop participating in those behaviors, because people-pleasing in its own way, even though it's like sort of a nice way, like there's nothing really nasty about people-pleasing per se, but it does become toxic if you think about it, because when you are in a relationship really is an exchange between two people. And if you can't show up as your authentic self, then even though you may have like the best intentions in that relationship, whether it's a relationship or a friendship or anything like that, if you're not showing up as your true authentic self, I think people kind of pick up on that and they don't like totally trust. Like they just don't totally trust the relationship because they're like, is she really this agreeable? Is she really this nice? Like it's a little too perfect to like where people feel like they don't totally trust it. And so I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I definitely know I have. And I've even had people tell me this, like, like I thought that, your niceness was just like a cover kind of thing, like they don't believe it, and people get weirded out by it, and they may choose to not engage in a friendship or a relationship with you because they don't trust you fully, because they feel like something's off about your niceness. And I could totally understand that. Like I could see how it would come off that way. People have learned in life to question people, and they don't always trust people 100%. And I totally understand that. But I think people are more like, when you show up authentic and genuine with people in relationships, they feel, it's just more genuine, because they know that, hey, if you don't like something, you're going to tell them, or if, that you're going to give them your true, honest opinion. They can't be sure that you're going to do that if they're just having a one-sided relationship with you. So I think, so you might lose out on some friendships or some people that are good, have potential to be good friends or good relationships, because they don't feel like you're being 100% real with them. And so being authentic is super important. And I always thought I was being authentic, because that's all I knew was how to be a people pleaser, because I was programmed that way since I was a child, by my mother. And so I didn't understand where other people were coming from when they just thought that I was being fake with them or something like that. In my own mind and heart, I was being authentic, because that's all I never had the opportunity to truly know my true self, because I had an abusive parent that didn't allow me to be me, if that makes sense. And so this is something that I want to work on, being my true authentic self and being super genuine. I am a very loving, caring person. I think that's partially truly who I am. And I think also I was just programmed to be that way by my very narcissistic and abusive mother. So my next thought that I'm just sort of taking you along in my healing journey, and I hope that this is helpful for somebody out there. But my sort of next thought after learning these things is, how do I change this behavior? And so, I really think that part of changing this behavior is obviously being aware of the behavior, why it's toxic, why I should want to change it. And, my overall goal in this whole journey is really just to be a healthy person, an emotionally healthy person, and to be able to have healthy relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, work relationships. All those types of relationships are relationships that we should want and be able to be our authentic selves. Obviously, with a work relationship, that's a little bit trickier, because you have to sort of play a little bit of politics in those relationships, and be professional at all times, of course. But just kind of in general, just trying to show up to relationships as my most true and authentic self. Because what happens is, when you stay in that type of behavior, that people-pleasing behavior, and if you engage with the wrong type of person, so an abuser, so it's so likely that you will, because those are the types of people that people pleasers tend to attract, as people who want to take advantage of that and exploit you. It just ends up sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. I hate when that happens when I do a video. I remember what I was going to say. So when you end up in that one-sided abusive type of relationship, you, as a people pleaser, you only end up lasting so long. I think any person could only last with an abusive in an abusive relationship for so long, because they're so abusive. But a people pleaser especially will not last long in that type of relationship. You'll end up feeling super drained. You'll end up feeling unhappy, because even though it feels normal, because that's maybe how you grew up, you're just going to end up spending your whole life being unhappy. And I think we owe it to ourselves to want to be happy, you know? A lot of us that have endured a lot of abuse, we're actually like, we are extremely compassionate people with a lot of empathy for others because we've been through a lot. I think a lot of people that have gone through trauma end up working for communities or organizations that promote healing in some form or another, whether they're hospitals or psychotherapists, are just community outreach, just organizations that are geared towards helping other people. So I think, we're good people. Not I think, I know we are good people. And we really deserve to honor our own happiness and be happy in life and, be authentic and speak up when we want something and know that we have enough worth, that people will still love us even if we speak our truth. And the people that don't love us, that's okay. Like, we have to get used to doing a couple of things. Saying no when we want to say no. And making our opinions known. And also, like, not being afraid of saying what we want. And also just being like our authentic selves, that's okay. One thing I used to have a really hard time doing, and I still I think I'm better at it now, but I used to be really bad with saying no. I had a very hard time saying no to people. I had a mentor when I grew up. She's actually still alive today. She's in her 90s. But she was really great to me, and I'm so grateful that she is in my life. I don't get to see her as often as I used to, and it's nothing to do with her. It's more just me living my life and, being busy with work and stuff like that. But we're still in touch. And anyhow, I used to always think it was so weird, like growing up, whenever she would say no, like if we would be in public or something and somebody would ask her something and she didn't want to do it, she would be like, no. And I always thought that was so odd. I'm like, why did she say no like that? And I realized as I got older and got to know her as an adult, because I was like 8 years old when I got paired up with her as a mentor, she went through a lot of abuse in her childhood, a lot of abuse, from sexual abuse to she was violated a few times by different people over and over. And it was really awful for her. But I realized, the reason she would say no as an adult in the way that she would say no is because she had been violated that way as a young woman, as a young girl. I think she was 11. And I think that when she says no now, it's like she's saying it with so much power and conviction now, almost like making up for her lack of authority. I don't want to say lack of authority, but her lack of boundaries that she had as a young girl, that she did not speak up and say no. She grew up with also a narcissistic mother, actually. And so, yeah, it's just so, like, these are some dots that I sort of connected as an adult as to why she said no in such a dramatic way as an adult. I realized because saying the words no is so important to her, because they really do pack so much power. And it's a power that we really should lean into. And so, yeah, so if you have trouble saying no, really work on saying no. And, how do you do that? It just takes practice. It takes mindfulness. It takes practice. And it takes, just actually executing it. And, for me, like in terms of honoring what I want and saying no, the biggest thing that I've been working on has been like honoring what I want. And I actually shared this with my girlfriends the other week, because we talk about a lot of this kind of thing, and I just said, yeah, this is something I'm actually actively working on, is saying no when I don't want to do something, and just honoring how I feel. And they were super great. They, support that, and we're really good about supporting each other. I'm so grateful that to have them in my life, to be able to, share things with and talk about these things with, like you guys. It's I literally think about okay, I think about my day, and I think about what's going on in the day, and I think about any decisions that I have to make, and whether or not I want to do them. So it's really like listening to myself, like what do I want to do? What do I feel like doing? Just, listening, like feeling in here, what do I want? What do I feel like doing today? How do I feel? Do I feel tired? Do I feel energetic? Do I feel bored? If I get an invitation to do something, instead of feeling this obligation like I have to do it, I will first consult self. And then from there, I also think about how it will affect those that are involved. So here's actually a good example. A friend of mine has an event that she really would like for me to go to. It's not really my thing, but I did listen to myself, which was, it was not something that I really wanted to do, but I also took my friend into consideration and how important it was to her, and weighed those things out. And she is important to me. I am also important to me, but it's a thing that is really important to her, and it's kind of like, a one-time thing, or like a rare thing. And so that is an example where I decided to not honor what I selfishly would want to or not want to do, because it would make her happy and it would make her feel loved and supported. So, and I am all for that. I think that you should prioritize yourself, but there are times where you also need to be loving, and a loving and supportive friend. And I do think that you have to be a good friend to have a good friend. And I don't believe in being selfish. I do believe in being selfless at times, and I do believe in being a good friend. And I still acknowledged how I felt. And I think that's part of a really important piece of the puzzle is, before I wouldn't really have even considered what I felt or how I felt. I would have just gone along with it because that's what the other person wanted. So the difference now is that I made sure to listen to myself and understand how I felt, but, also considering the other people involved and making the morally correct decision there, and prioritizing being a good friend. It's not going to kill me to go out to an event that will make my friend happy. You know what I'm saying? So, so that's pretty much how I've been working on it. Every day I just think about the decisions that I have to make. and then who's involved, how, what the consequences of that decision will be, or how it will affect myself and others. And sometimes I will write it out, or I'll think about, sometimes, let's be honest, the week gets busy and you can't sit down and with a notebook and write down all the decisions you have to make that day and how you're going to handle them. But sometimes at the end of the week, I will write some decisions down or whatever. And then I will think, what did I do this week to honor how I feel? What did I do this week to be true to myself? And doing that, writing it down, thinking about it, writing it down, just asking those questions is really helping me to be more self-aware of making sure that I show myself love. I have on my to-do list, I always, I'm trying to do it every week. I will put self-love down there. And that's obviously expressed in many different ways. It could be anything from I don't know, a facial to conditioning your hair, deep conditioning your hair, or doing your nails, or, making decisions that are loving to you, that are taking care of self. Because as people pleasers, we tend to forget or we don't know how to take care of ourselves. And I think it's really, really important for yourself. You can't really be your true authentic self and be honest and be you if you don't do that. So, and I think it's an important trait. It's an important thing that you bring to a relationship, whether it's friendship, romantic relationship, whatever. You need to be authentic. And I think I started to say earlier, some people will still love you, and those are your people. And some people will not love you, and that's okay, because you know what? Those people that will not love you because you have an opinion of your own, or because sometimes you don't want to do what they want to do, those are not your people. Those are people that just want to be in one-sided relationships. And as a healthy person, you should not want to be in a one-sided relationship. It's not beneficial to you at all. It's not healthy. And you should be prioritizing healthy relationships, because at the end of the day, that is actually where you're going to be healthy and happy. And I want all of you to be healthy and happy and have rewarding relationships and relationships with people who love and value you. But it really starts with you and being able to love and value yourself. So I think I'm going to leave the video there. Again, if you're interested in checking out Jerry's YouTube, his name is Jerry Wise, and I highly recommend him. He has so many great videos and covers a lot of really great topics for self-healing. And I think I'll leave it there. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. Bye.